Kunja Bihari. Jaya Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Shri Shri Radha Madhava ki. Could they get the Bhagavatam? Ja. Hare Krishna and welcome to today's Srimad Bhagavatam class. Someone first time here or new to this? No. First time. Welcome. Are you staying or are you just about to? Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Jaivam Narotamam Devim Sarasvatim Vyasam Tadochayam Mudhirayet Nasta Prayeshu Bhatrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamashluke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki. So we continue to read from Canto 5, Chapter 14, text number 14. So it's again some prose. Probably no one really knows how to how to sing. We go word by word, right? Yada, when, to, but, because of misfortune. Parabadhaya, in spite of exploiting all others. Andaha, blind. Atmane, for himself. Na, upanamati, does not fall into one's share. Tada, at that time, he certainly, Pitriputra, of the father or sons, Parhishmataha, as insignificant as a piece of grass. Pitriputran, father or sons. Va, or. Saha, he, the conditioned soul. Kalu, indeed. Bhakshyati, gives trouble to. Translation and purport by His Divine Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. In this material world, when the conditioned soul cannot arrange for his own maintenance, despite exploiting others, he tries to exploit his own father or son, taking away that relative's possessions, although they may be very insignificant. If he cannot acquire things from his father, son, or other relatives, he is prepared to give them all kinds of trouble. Purport. Once we actually saw a distressed man steal ornaments from his daughter just to maintain himself. As the English proverb goes, necessity knows no law. When a conditioned soul needs something, he forgets his relationship with his relatives and exploits his own father or son. We also receive information from Srimad Bhagavatam that in this age of Kali, the time is quickly approaching when a relative will kill another relative for a small farthing. Without Krishna consciousness, people will deteriorate further and further into a hellish condition wherein they will perform abominable acts. Om Ajnanati Mirandasya Gnanjana Shalakaya Chakshuram Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Karamayam Dadati Svabrantikam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhaktarinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vagishayasya vadhane, Lakshmiryasya chavakshasi, Yasya te hridaye samvit, Tam narasimham aham bhaje, Pralada hridayaladam, Bhaktavitya vidaram, Sharatindurjim vande, Parindra vandanam harim. Translation, once more. In this material world, when the conditioned soul cannot arrange for his own maintenance, despite exploiting others, he tries to exploit his own father or son, taking away that relative's possessions, although they may be very insignificant. If he cannot acquire things from his father, son, or other relatives, he is prepared to give them all kinds of trouble. So, the title of the chapter, ironically, is called The Forest of Enjoyment. But obviously what we get to hear is the contrary. It could be called The Forest of Sufferings. And maybe as last time when it was my turn to give a class, we were still at the same chapter. And yes, this is a lot of sobering up anyone who has still hopes and aspirations in regards to material life. And it's a lot of pessimism about the stay here in this material world. And here the tendency to exploit others is highlighted in a very, painful way, because I guess the people we would expect least to actually exploit us or to give us such trouble is our own family members. Father to son is considered here, or the example of a father stealing from his own daughter the ornaments to maintain himself. So it's common nowadays that, in Kali Yuga particularly, that particularly men, but also many women, but mainly men, are prone to intoxication, like might be alcoholics or gamblers, all these kind of bad habits that make people lose all shame, but also all compassion. If someone gets addicted, really addicted to a drug, for example, also maybe to gambling or other stuff, they become less and less compassionate because they only serve their addiction or the troubles that come from it. They're just forced to somehow or other, by hook and crook, as you say, get money. And then also there's no stopping because it's a family member. On the contrary, it's rather seems to be the closest thing that someone, I deal with someone who's maybe dependent on me emotionally or whatever. So this is going on a lot, that actually parents, fathers, but also mothers tend to exploit their children, but also the other way around. The children think my parents are there just to give me this, give me that, maintain me forever, and they can't wait sometimes to inherit, what parents have built up during their life, and they might try to speed up the process a bit. We can laugh about it a bit, yeah. But actually, it's a very dark aspect, particularly of Kali Yuga, that this becomes more of a common thing. Also, in literature, like Dostoevsky's writing, there's one thing, one work of him. It's called The Gambler. It's particularly about gambling addiction, and it illustrates in a very interesting way how some family members just wait for the rich aunt, I think, to die, because they don't care about like having an aunt and like a relationship and something, but to speak of caring for her, no, they wait that they can get the money in order to solve their financial issues, in order to gamble themselves. So that's something where relationships, like which we would consider originally something very heartfelt, based on love and trust, become rather like some type of business arrangement or necessities. And here Prabhupada says, necessity knows no law. So we also see it in a big way in society, that profits or advantages one can get economically or financially are often above humanity. It's a symptom of also certain, political arrangements, certain isms that we follow, like certain ways of capitalism. Capitalism in itself, like as communism or other ways, from the idea, of course, they are promising. That's why people pick it up in the first place, because the idea of it is promising. But what people make of it is not promising. It's the other way around. It becomes something very exploitative. And because here it's meant like it's about taking away from others. And I would like to say a few words, because also Srila Prabhupada in some places, particularly in the Sri Upanishad, is often arguing about the capitalist and communist conflict, where it is also about property. It's essentially about who owns what, who can claim what, and who can get what. Communism is an interesting concept. I grew up in the former GDR. I was like 7 years when the border fell, but I have noticed and witnessed a few things, and also my family, of course. So I'm in touch with, so to speak, people in an area in which communism was practiced, right? And two essential ideas of communism are, first of all, there are no classes of men, a classless society. That's the idea. We are all equal worker state, and that there is no private property. And the promise of this idea is, with this we will solve all problems, economical problems, and we will have peace. That's essentially the promise of this ideology. And it's called also an utopia. They know, because this is like an idea, like make the world like some type of paradise. And the pre-stage to it, this is what is called socialism. And Karl Marx in his manifesto considers communism a natural progression of things when particular political systems will fail. And what does it mean? Like, communism means that, like, he considers people have needs. Like here also it said, people have needs to maintain themselves. They need food, they need clothes, they need place to stay, place to live. So everyone should support each other to fulfill one's needs. It's also rather a materialistic way of life where it's mainly about physical needs, not too much about spirituality anyway, not. So, and they also say, of course, we shouldn't need governments because there is a conflict or like always a problem of exploitation by a so-called ruling class, worker class, ruling class, you know. Ruling class exploits workers and so on, so workers have to fight the ruling class. So essentially this is the conflict. And so they try to dispose of a government, essentially. In the stage of socialism, there will be a government that centralizes everything, controls production of needs. And but ultimately it's about that we don't need that because everyone works in a spirit of solidarity. You say that in English, yeah, with each other. So and that's a dream. And that there's no private property means all the means of production, for example, like land, like also mines in which you find minerals and everything, should belong to everyone. So this is like the idea, promising idea, and capitalism is like contrary to that. You know, it's about private property and like owning things, having a government, and so on. But what is not in the calculation, which is essentially what Srimad Bhagavatam and also other scriptures teach us, is that the first part of the equation, or like not equation, calculation is wrong. Because it is not considered who is the true owner of things. You know, it's an attempt to make humanity the owner of the world, but Sri Ishopanishad teaches us differently. Ishavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagadam jagat tena tyaktena pungchita makrita kashasvit tanam. Everything moving, non-moving, alive and not alive in this universe is owned by the Lord, controlled by the Lord. That's why he's called Isha. And everyone is entitled to his quota, like that what he needs. This one can take, but not more than that, knowing well whom does it belong to. So that's the fault in many isms, that it's mistaken who can actually claim what, you know, in the world. And how can we argue that philosophically that Krishna or God owns everything that exists, including ourselves? Because in the purport to the first mantra of the Upanishad, Srila Prabhupada explains the two para and apara prakriti, means material nature and spiritual nature, the souls, us. We are also owned by the Lord. And why can he be the Isha, or like the true owner? Because there's a difference between possessing something and owning something. Someone knows what the difference is? Possessing something, owning something?
If you own something, it belongs to you, and if you possess something, it's just like you take care of it.
Yeah, it's with you. If you possess something, now I possess this book at the moment, it's in my hands. But legally, the ownership, the rightful owner would be, for example, the temple, right, by law. So the owner is what is by law established as the person who has the rightful claim. And I can possess these things, but they are not mine. Similar like with work, you might get a car from your company or like a laptop, and you possess it, you're responsible for it, but it's not your property, right? It's the company's. So similarly, Krishna is the one who provides everything. So it said his material energy is the cause for the world. Why is something existing? Because Krishna's energy is manifesting it through his will. If he wouldn't will that there is a universe, there wouldn't be one. And it's by his will and energy that the world is manifest, and also that we are manifest. So and everything that exists depends on him to exist. Right? If Krishna wouldn't want this world to exist anymore, it would stop. So it depends on the will of Krishna. And we cannot make this claim. Nothing depends on our will in the essential way that the elements exist if we will them or not. The world goes its way if we want it or not. Time is taking its makes what it makes. It makes things come and go if we want it or not. It's not coming from us, it's not out of us that things exist, and it's not depending on us. And that's a very essential instruction of Sri Ishopanishad. Men means human beings are supposed to understand deeply. Because if this becomes a consciousness, if this is truly an awareness, then the claim to that is mine, and I can, make it private property, for example, it will stop. And this is something that the materialistic mind will not accept. The materialistic mind thinks I'm entitled to this, and let me get it. Let's create laws, let's create arrangements, have political systems that allow, and whether either the individual groups or even whole states, to claim things for themselves and to force others to fulfill their needs, exploit them. So therefore, Srila Prabhupada also in the purport highlights a few things. I would like to read it to you. One must be satisfied with whatever privileges are given to him by the mercy of the Lord. There can be no peace if the communist or capitalist or any other party claims proprietorship over the resources of nature, which are entirely the property of the Lord. The capitalist cannot curb the communist simply by political maneuvering, nor can the communist defeat the capitalist simply by fighting for stolen bread. If they do not recognize the proprietorship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, all the property they claim to be their own is stolen. So if one does not recognize this principle of Ishopanishad in the eyes of Scripture or in the eyes of the Lord, one becomes a thief. And the word thief already indicates it's something unlawful. It violates laws, universal laws. And therefore, there's punishment. So it's called karma, right? So if if human beings do not recognize that they're actually stealing or try to steal from the Lord, so there will be consequences. And that could be poverty in another life. It's hard to swallow this idea that you are born in miserable circumstances and it could be your own doing. Sounds unfair, right? What did I do? I can't remember anything, right? I was born like this. Same like born rich. I mean, what did they do to deserve it? Nothing yet, apparently, right? Because they were just born in it. So, but karma indicates or tells us there has been cause and effect before that, and the states of life we are in have to do with how we acted, what our mindset was in a previous life. Similarly, if someone seriously mistreats others or exploits others, it will fall back and will manifest in another life to that person. So in that sense, even that sounds maybe cruel and people have issue with that or take issue with that, no one is innocent. It's a myth that in a mature world, anyone is innocent in the essential sense. Means I'm free of sin practically, free of any wrongdoings. Yes, I can't remember them, that's an issue from a previous life. But thinking it through, it makes more sense to accept like karma and reincarnation than some kind of blind, random, way nature takes, and some have benefits, others not. If you think it through, this is more cruel. If you don't even have a concept or an answer, and right. So because this gives us also something in our hands to understand what can suffering actually do, it's supposed to make us learn, like it's a correction. We are actually in a correction facility, so to speak. It's sometimes Prabhupada uses these terms. Durga Devi, the goddess, the consort of Lord Shiva, is the prison overseer. That's what Durga means, like prison. One meaning of the word. And Durga Devi is the goddess who arranges or like takes care of the prisoners. So that's an important understanding that is also highlighted in the Srimad Bhagavatam a lot. And pointing out, like here in this verse, like if someone is truly on this really exploitative path and gives so much harm and trouble to others and violates so many ethical, moral laws, one creates just a hell for himself. And therefore, it's advised rather to practice austerity, to try to tolerate difficult circumstances, because this has a purifying effect. If I try to accept if something is lacking, missing, or like I don't have this, and the dissatisfaction that comes from it, the trouble of lack of status, success, and whatever. So it's rather like try to tolerate that in the understanding it's also a karmic thing. Of course, I do what I can, but if I don't get the results, I must still depend on Krishna. Because if I try to force it by, criminal means, like here, like I steal even from my own family, exploit family members, then I create sinful reactions. Vikarma, it's called. So that's something important to understand, to always be conscious that things are there for reason, karmic reasons, they are justified in both ways. If you are very successful, very intelligent, very beautiful, talented, this and that, it's justified. You deserve it. It's your karma. And the other way around, if you don't have it, or like if there's also disease or like whatever things, they're also karmically justified. It's not that we should understand the principle. It's not that we then look down on others. You see, it's your bad karma, so suffer. That's not the idea. Of course, Vaishnavas particularly supposed to be compassionate and try to be supportive of others, serve them particularly with Krishna consciousness, but to understand, to not make people victims, helpless victims of what's happening, but try to own one's life situation and try to make a learning. And this is difficult sometimes very difficult, but possible. And Scripture is supposed to guide us there, to come to the point where we can really own our life circumstances. So we talked a bit of communism and the ideas that, because it's an attempt to solve these problems that we have, maintenance. The Isms try to present ideas how we can do that. One thing why communism also cannot work, it assumes that it's possible to have a classless society. Everyone is really equal. Equal meaning practically we all kind of the same type of person, more or less. You know, they defy the idea there shouldn't be a ruling class. So, and the Bhagavad Gita, or like the Vedic culture, has a very different viewpoint to that. You know, in the fourth chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, I think in 4:13, Chaturvanyam maya shrishtam guna karma vibhagashaha. According to the three modes of nature and the work associated with them, I created the four divisions of human society. Right. So, I think everyone is familiar with or most of you, with the concept of the three gunas, right? That material nature has three core aspects. Sattva, or goodness, rajas, which is passion, the creative principle also, and tamas, the ignorance or the destructive principles, and sattva is the maintaining principle. And we all have different natures based on which kind of these aspects form our psychophysical nature. And there are 4 essential types. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra means the intelligent class, Srila Prabhupada often calls it. The ruling class, we would say, or administrative class, the Kshatriyas. And it's not just rulership. Kshat means hurt someone. And Triya means to protect from. So Kshatriyas are those who protect others from getting hurt. Right? You need, like some people nowadays, they make really irrational claims in some countries, like dispose of the police. And I think, what the hell are you thinking? And who's protecting you when someone gets to you and whatever, beats you up or tries to whatever, rob you and whatever thing. So it's really just some crazy ideas where people react just impulsively to some injustice, or like even just apparent injustice, maybe out of unwillingness to accept some, disciplinary actions, because no one is super moral, ethical being, and people do nonsense, and there must be an instance that rectifies that. So Kshatriyas are also, it's important. There is no way to have a society without like an administrative class. And even if you pretend we are all equal, some people will, based on their nature and their ways of thinking, will be the ones who do this kind of administrative thing. Because in a group, things have to be managed. You cannot just like rely on, oh yeah, everyone will know what to do. No, things don't work like this. You know, I mean, you can show me where this works, but there will always be something. Then there's the Vaishyas, those who are like good with agriculture and animal protection, or with trading, everything. And then the Shudras, the working class. Those people can, are able to perform different types of labor. They have the psychophysical nature. And this is always there in every society, even if it's not named like this, even if it's denied by others, like, no, we don't have classes in our society. It's an illusion. It's there. And sometimes it's just like, just unofficial. Like also in our society here, like in Switzerland, in Europe, there's no classless society. It's an illusion. You know, there are people, for example, also with more education, with less education. There's always also in the working class, there's a upper middle class and lower middle class and this class and that class. So it's always there. So that's also like a very essential misunderstanding of nature, of material nature, to try to erase the differences between people, and labeling it as discrimination in a unjust way. And that's not true. If you distinguish one thing from another, it's not a discrimination in the sense I treat you unfairly. Because also it's obvious, apparent, like we are not all the same. And why should we like ignore the varieties and differences? Doesn't make sense. It's appreciating varieties and differences and see the strength and weaknesses of both, and then we also complement each other. You know, in that if we like have a spirit also of community, you know, because communism is actually together, community. And Srila Prabhupada actually sometimes called this, what we do, Krishna consciousness, a spiritual communism. Why? Because we put Krishna at the beginning as the true owner of things. So it's not we own things and just share equally and there's no private property. No, Krishna owns everything, and we, in his service, try to use it properly according to Shastra. So from these two things, Ishavasyam principle and also one ashrama dharma, Chaturvanyam Maya Shrishtam, Gunakarma Vibhagasaha, comes the conclusion that needs to be a certain structure in society in order to establish that kind of consciousness way of living. And that's one of the very big challenges ISKCON faces. Because there's like, since years, there's always the discussion, Varnashram Dharma, and how can this be achieved? And even the great acharyas like Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he also wrote the book on Brahmana and Vaishnava. He discusses a lot like the whole principles of Varna and Ashrama. He also says, actually, it's not possible in this time and age. In Kali Yuga, actually Varnashram is already lost. We don't have it. Why? Because like Varna Sankara, the unwanted population means the mixing of all kinds of people already, how to say, erased more or less, let's say, the pure forms. Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra. We are all people with mixed tendencies and abilities. How is it anyway ascertained who is what? So in one ashram, you have like a few things. There's astrology, that if one is really a competent astrologer, we must say. If there's a competent astrologer, they can read, okay, what's the nature of the child or a person. So that's one indication that shows who are you based on Vedic understanding. And then there's, of course, natural tendencies. What kind of activities am I drawn to? What am I naturally good at? What comes from my psychophysical nature? This is also one indication that tells you who you are, practically. And this is connected to training as well. So Vedic society means, of course, also training children in the early age, based on the genders differently. What kind of things to learn, spiritual knowledge, but also different types of work. And this also shows what are you, how to say, capable of, what are you, what work is adequate for you. So and then there's of course also what others see in you, if it resonates with others, if you try to do a work, a certain service, and people feel very satisfied because you deliver, like say, a good quality, or it seems just harmonious. It can also be the indication, like, yeah, that's who you are, that's what you're supposed to do. So these are some things that help to find out, like, who are you? But then there's also the consideration, where did you take birth? Although it's clearly, the argument is very strong that Janma, or it's not the main criteria, because it doesn't guarantee if you're born in a certain family, you are the same type of nature. Prabhupada often gives also analogies like that. What comes to my mind is now like with the judge. If you're born in the family of, let's say, judges and so on, doesn't make you automatically a judge, or like a brahmana and so on. Of course, if you receive training and so on, that makes sense. At the same time, there is a consideration that seminal kind of, let me read it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur says that that also bloodlines indicate already nature as well. By seminal consideration, the descendants of a brahmana are also brahmanas. This belief has been generally accepted for a long time. There is no shortage of evidence from the Smritis, Puranas, and histories in support of this belief. Yet, by the evidence that we have presented regarding the degradation of brahmanas, the disqualification of brahmanas who commit sinful activities, and the uncertainty of who is a real brahmana, every listener will be able to understand how qualified the present-day descendants of brahmanas are. So he gives credit to the point that yes, also genetically, what you inherit from your parents also to a big degree determines your nature. At the same time, in Kali Yuga, it's different because of like so much mixture and the degradation in general. But think about it. If two people are truly situated in a mode of goodness, man and a woman, and then they beget a child, it's very likely that this child has a nature of the parents, as it is also with other stuff. If you're very much in a mode of ignorance, it's not guaranteed. Genetics are a bit more complicated. There can be, you know, we also see examples in scripture where, like, let's say, it's an extraordinary example, but like Prahlad Maharaj was born into like a Rakshasa Yaksha like family, very demons, and he was a saint. Right? So that's like some special examples. But generally, we also maybe see that we have traditions that people have like already family businesses over many, many generations, because it's part of the nature as well. Businesses or also handcraft or whatever. So, but of course, it can be that you're born something very different. So, but it shouldn't be completely discarded, the idea that also like your birth indicates already something about who you are. So, of course, Krishna consciousness means also to consciously transform yourself out of such considerations even. So for some time we need them in order to get, how to say, properly situated, as we say, and to do work that also makes, is in tune, where we can offer the best service. That's the understanding. Why do we bother to figure out like what's my nature if I'm anyway not the body and I'm a spirit soul and just to chant Hare Krishna? It is because we all have some task in life, and we got to maintain ourselves. That's the essential message also of the verse. And this should happen in the proper situation where you also feel fulfilled. Because another thing is, if you really do what is your nature, you experience fulfillment, inspiration. You're motivated to do that. And then it's also something that can, if you speak of bhakti, support your devotional service to Krishna. Because if you do it out of your being, because you feel that's me, and I want to give it to Krishna, that's devotional service. If you're resentful and think, oh my God, I got to do this, and it's really not me, of course, maybe it counts for something. Krishna sees in the hearts the motivation of a person is only visible to the super soul, actually. Because we even ourselves, if you're not really sattvic and conscious and clear, we even don't see our deepest motivations, why we do things or what's happening. But Krishna sees it. So he's the ultimate judge of who is truly performing devotional service. Because externally it's very difficult to ascertain. We can have our, of course, assumptions, but also our perceptions. If you're a bit subtle and a bit intelligent, of course you can also see through some people's pretense, perhaps, But yes, if something is like really in tune with your nature, Jagannath Baladev Subhachadevi ki jai, Shishi Gaunitai ki jai, then you can do it with love. That's the idea. And devotional service is about doing things with love, out of love. Because that's what Krishna wants. He doesn't need anything from us. He doesn't need to be dressed, or even now he was eating, but he doesn't need food, right? We know. Krishna doesn't need food. He's self-satisfied, but he likes to receive, of course, the love of the devotees, and through the medium of food, for example, or like getting dressed, getting taken care of. This what happens, how to say, on the level of exchange. That is what he's looking for. So Krishna is also, like in so many places, said, not impressed by quantities. I mean, it's like, trying to impress the unlimited Lord, full of opulences we can't even slightly comprehend, to think, oh, like I give you a lot of this. Krishna has everything to an extent we can't even imagine. But he would like to see that what we give him out of like a feeling wanting to please him. That's actually also the definition of in pure devotional service. Anyabhilashita shunyam jnana karma dhyanavritam anukulyena krishnanu shiranam bhakti ruttamam. That with the intention to please, to give Krishna unmixed by a certain motives. And that's more easy if you like what you do. Or if it's something that comes with your nature. Which doesn't mean you should only follow if it feels good, like a certain work. Because there are always times when it's like a drag. You feel like not inspired, or like your body aches, or you feel you have enough of it. No, it's about like understanding, like this is something I'm equipped with by the Lord, And in this way I can serve him. And we also need to discover what is truly our potential. This is also a process of learning. But if we arrive there of having a clarity about our nature and what we can do, then we have a good basis for serving Krishna effectively. Right? Because, I mean, also, let's be honest, we see many devotees also like who served in various capacities for a very long time, but they're not fulfilled, they're not happy. Although the promise, you spoke of promises of ideas and philosophies, the promise is, do this and you will be happy. So, and then there must be also reflection on the way, if I feel I don't arrive there where I'm supposed to arrive, what's happening, what's missing, what I'm supposed to learn or like to make differently. That's important. Because if you stick to some just ideas, but this is the dogma and I just need to continue to follow, but I will not be fulfilled and happy, I do something wrong. Because if you understand Atma is blissful, the soul, the nature, and if I'm continuously not blissful, although I think I act based on Atma Tattva, Atma Gyan, this is dissonance. And if I don't, pay attention to that, I harm myself. Because no one wants or no one would vote for, yes, let's be miserable, right? That's the state of mind. No, everyone would immediately choose happiness. What happiness means for each person might be different, but the experience of being fulfilled, being happy, being blissful, loving what you do and then giving, that's something we all, without hesitation, we would take it. So yes, maybe summarizing shortly what we were talking about. So the verse was stating or talking about an exploitative spirit of the materialistic soul or mindset, which leads to exploiting even own family members in a very cruel way, up to killing them even. We talked about like materialistic solutions for that, for the needs like communism, socialism, capitalism, and what they lack, because the Ishavasya principle is required to understand who's the true owner, and also that it is an illusion to have a classless society. Chatravanyam yashirshtam, guna karma vibhagasaha. There is always classes, but they need to, the metaphor is given also like a body, with head, with arms, legs, and each part of the body has particular tasks, and they're not like interchangeable, just like that. So, but in order like that this works, there's a system called Varnashram Dharma, which also includes understanding what is my nature, so which body part am I, and how can I serve best? Because if I do what is my nature, I tend to be fulfilled, I tend to be happy, and I can do things out of love. And bhakti is about doing things with love and out of love. Hare Krishna. So if there are any comments or questions. Shall we have another microphone here? I don't know if this works. Should be on now, but otherwise we have to.
Thank you so much for your lecture, Prabhu. When you were mentioning the term spiritual communism, I was reminded of a school class that I was leading through the temple, and at the end someone was saying like, this sounds like a communism that really works. And I know that it's quite difficult to preach in communist countries, but if it's really the thing that this is the communism that works, it might work that we can preach there. So maybe you can tell something about it and how similar the ideas actually are.
Mm-hmm. For preaching's sake, I would be careful to use the term. It's, of course, it's an interesting concept, because now how to say, politics are very heated also in regards to this kind of thing, capitalism, communism, socialism, because as Prabhupada also puts it in the purport to the Upanishad, they're always fighting to the extreme. And also what we should understand is like many people might react rightfully very allergic to the term communism, because I also grew up in a GDR, like some form of communism. I was small, I didn't notice too much the bad things. For me it was cool. It felt just, as a child you were like, you know, there was kind of community and things together, and there was like clear directions and ideas. Things were simple, didn't have much, but it was also okay. Now we have too much, and it's like sometimes difficult to even go in the shop and like to decide what you want. Back then you went into the shop and you didn't know what is there anyway to get. So it's very different. So because communism usually was established in most cases, maybe in Russia, in China, GDR, not just by, how to say, violence, by terror. They were very violent. You know, it was bloody revolutions. Also, like if you consider Marxism and Lenin and Stalin, all these people, they were brutal dictators, like on the same level as Hitler, you could say, for sure. So, like, communism is not based on choice usually. I don't know how it's in Cuba or like other countries where the idea was really, how to say, taking roots. Also Mozambique, I think Mozambique is Africa, right? Yeah, there also. So the idea is like there for many people, but usually what goes along with it is a lot of violence and oppression. You know, also in the GDR, like we had Stasi, Staatssicherheit. You know, people were how to say, watched, and that we were how to say, imprisoned behind a wall. Hardly people could get out. Freedom of speech or religion, forget about it. You know, and so therefore I would understand more like the spirit of community and. Yeah, for preaching's sake, people must get the impression this is something that really also is about me having a, how to say, a way of life that fulfills me, that also lets me grow, you know, that can work for the planet, but it's not like something forced on me. It was also in the early days of ISKCON, the preaching was very fanatic, you know that, like, and also many people experienced this kind of oppressive spirit in this. So I think perhaps also Krishna Prabhu, also maybe Tara Prabhu, if they have some ideas in terms of applying this to preaching, this kind of term, spiritual communism, it certainly should be always with proper context. You know, because otherwise people easily think, oh, the Hare Krishnas are communists. It can be rather disadvantaged than that we really reach out. But I don't know if you want to comment on that.
Maybe I can put it more specific, because my father comes from Vietnam.
There is certainly a way, and it takes a lot of courage and willingness to sacrifice. I'm just thinking of like the reports back then when Russia was still Soviet Union, and like they were hardly persecuted, put into prisons, tortured. Like communism, you know, it's like they don't tolerate, usually the regimes don't tolerate ideas beside their own. Particular religion is like a, wow. Religion is like the thing you don't do in like communist, you know, countries. So I don't know. I think I'm not the right person to really consider what it would be a good strategy to do that. I don't know. And it's also a big topic, right? And if you start practicing bhakti yoga, what we do here, then you're every day practically in some austerity. And our main austerity is the chanting. Why is it austerity? Because the mind must focus for a relatively long time, it's a long time, on the mantra, for example, and to withdraw him from other thoughts. For example, this is like always discipline. Austerity means also following certain disciplines, or like the program, getting up very early, go through some hygiene and chant mantras. But there's also other austerities for purification. If you talk of sinful activities, like next Tuesday again, for example, there's another Ekadashi day. These are 2 days in a month, which are particularly austerity in regards to the body in terms of eating, to refrain from grains, beans and stuff, besides anyway the vegetarian diet. And one can, according to one's capacity, if health allows it, that's important, if health allows it, you should not like torture your body with austerity. That's not recommended in scripture. That's in the mode of ignorance if your body is just suffering or your mind is just suffering from that. One can also fast from, for example, simply water. I try this from time to time, but I don't do that always, regularly. It's more like occasionally, and it feels good. I feel like it's a purification process. And it's also explained that Ekadashi particularly is meant also for whatever sinful reactions you gathered. You can purify yourself. Additionally, from the perspective of bhakti, is also use that day to increase even your devotion to Krishna, to maybe chant more and read more into things. But many people struggle already from, I didn't eat, my body feels weak, my mind is not inspired. But yeah, this is some austerities, which is a big part. But we do not like too much emphasize austerity in a sense of, just refraining. It's more like the positive austerity is like be in service, be engaged in service. And that's also often austerity, acting for the pleasure of Krishna or the devotees.
And what about like long-term like fasting, like multiple days?
Well, that's something that certainly you can do. And maybe it's something to maybe consult some devotees or like about who maybe do that. And maybe it's also important to consider like, would there be a necessity for me? Maybe also would it be a health benefit as well? Because for us it's also like the food should always be offered to Krishna, like that we eat prasadam. That's also an austerity in a sense, that we purify the body through that. But it's also, for me, I also like if I for some time, let's say, go along with water only, it's a nice experience. But it's something you must consider whether this is something that really benefits you, Hare Krishna. All right. Thank you very much. Granted, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna.